Hey, I'm Brian Van, Sportbike and today we're going to do a product review on the Armour Bodies Race Bodywork Kit for the 2015 through 2018 Yamaha R3. Okay, if you've been to the site or our YouTube channel, you know we've had this bike since 2015. This project has been ongoing. It's going to continue again in 2019. My little buddy Max Fan is going to be racing this thing in Weir, so we're just going to put some of the finishing touches on it. We wanted to install the Armour Bodies Race Bodywork Kit to give you a contrast between that and the Hot Bodies. Those are two products that we both believe in and offer here. They're different, and they sell at a little bit of a different price point, with the Armour Bodies being slightly more expensive. As you can tell, I already have it installed on the bike. I'm going to go over this, show you how it fits once it's finished. Then I'm going to disassemble the bike completely and individually show you where I drilled each piece, talk about any finite details it took to install it, and then reassemble the kit so you can see what it took to get it done. Overall, my impressions of the way the Armour Bodies installed and fit on the R3, I'm happy with it. I like it quite a bit. The lines are nice. The quality is excellent. The R3 is a little more complex than some other race bodywork installs you'll find. You'll remember that from my Hot Bodies video. It just takes more to get this bike done. One of the reasons is you have these side panels that you have to have on the bike. They tie everything together. So you don't have something up front that's fitting independent of the tail, because in the end, they will in fact be connected. So their fit is tied to one another, and that just enhances the complexity of this project a little bit. Overall, the fit of this was excellent. One of the real challenges with the Hot Bodies kit was back here with the tail section. Their tail section was a traditional one piece, and you really have to flex it to get it over the subframe. You could modify your subframe. You might want to check the rules with your racing org if you're racing to make sure that that's okay before you do it. But it was a challenge to get it over if you had not done that. Armour Bodies developed a different style tail to combat that. The top comes off completely. It actually comes with these three deuce fasteners already drilled and installed. We'll show you that as we do the removal and then reinstallation. This made putting that tail on really easy. This whole thing fit like a glove, no problem. Armour Bodies does also offer an optional Superbike seat pan. It's a fiberglass seat pan. I think we're going to add that to this bike as well. That'll be in another installment. Okay, so you can get additional pieces if you choose to do so. I think there is a tank cover as well. For our purposes now, we're just going to run the OEM tank cover. Moving forward, I have an M4 full system on the bike right now. You can see I had to trim the lower fairing to get proper clearance. On this side, I used the mounting bracket that the OEM fairing would use. I drilled each one of the holes dead center. Two fasteners here, I used rivet style. Come up to the upper fairing. You can see those also are drilled right on center. Same with the windscreen. That all fit well. Front fender, fit good. The clearance between the front tire and the lower fairing, I want to cover that now. This bike comes with a 110 front tire. For the last couple of seasons, we've been using a 120/70 front and a 150 rear. We're actually rethinking that now, and we're going to go to a 110/140 setup. That 110 tire is, of course, smaller. This clearance is tight. I do believe that would pass. Possibility of very light contact under brakes with a 120. Putting a 110 on there is going to significantly change that, and it's going to bring that gap back. I just want to point that out. There are some R3 riders out there that are still riding a 110 in the front or prefer a 110 in the front. I want to make sure you know that in advance. I think it's going to be A-okay. There's enough of a gap there. You do get some fork flex and maybe some light contact. The hot setup's the 110. If you're using that, that's going to be a non-issue. Real quickly, we'll go over to the other side, just give you a brief look. Once again, you can see the lines. Everything came together really nice. Fit and finish is excellent. Over here on the clutch side, just enough clearance everywhere. No trimming was necessary. The way this passes under the frame here, I had to fabricate a little bracket back here, and I actually used a driven racing reservoir mount. They have like a Ladybird style, it's stainless steel, it's pretty robust. I'd used that on the hot bodies, so I just reshaped it a bit to mount up the Armour Bodies on this side. I'll show you that when we have everything removed. Overall, I'm happy with it. I think it's worth the money. Okay, we're gonna begin by installing the tail section. I found over the years the tail section is almost always the most challenging piece to install on the bike. And this one's really unique the way Woodcraft has it set up, being two pieces with that removable top. And I gotta tell you, it was a lot easier to install it with this style than it was the other style. Ultimately, you could, if it's a race bike, okay, this is the area where you're gonna have problems right here. These brackets, the way they stick up, if the rules allow for it, if it's a track bike, you could just literally take a grinder, grind these off, do a nice clean job, finish it off, put some touch-up paint on, and that'll alleviate any concerns you have. You could absolutely 100% do that. For the purpose of this video, we're not going to, because there's really no reason to do so. And you're just talking about ounces at the end of the day, and this thing's already so light, it's unbelievable. So the tail. It came with these slide-on deuce fasteners already installed in the fasteners. That was included with the kit that we got from Armour Bodies. You can see the two main mounting holes here at the top that correspond with the bracket on the subframe. I literally drilled dead center. Moving forward, this is one of the holes, right? There's some on the upper fairing as well, but this is one of the holes that's going to correspond with the side panel. We're going to focus on that in a few minutes. You can take your metal J-nuts off the OEM bodywork, drill this hole and slide those over. I had used previously windscreen well nuts and screws. I prefer that because you just have a little bit of give here with the rubber, and I think flex, crashability, I personally prefer that. I drilled the hole, mounting hole up here, dead center. It'll correspond with the hole right here. I'll show you all this when we do the install. Same on both sides. There is a tab here that you can use, a little plastic push pin, to install this to the top of it. I honestly don't really think that's going to be necessary. I did drill it. I would probably use a zip tie there. I'm not going to bother with that. Okay, you do what you feel is right there. And notice I still have the seat on, and it's the setup of this tail that allows you to just leave that on, right? There's really no reason to pull that off. Underneath, to connect to the undertail, the OEM plastic undertail, we have these 6 spots, and there are the plastic push fasteners. I reused all those fasteners, and I drilled each one of those holes pretty much dead center, okay? And I did a lot of this without even mocking it up. Armour Bodies has historically had a great fit for me. Just drill it on the center, on the dimples, and go. To install this, really pretty simple. Just kind of coming over here like so. Gotta make sure these tabs are up on the top. Slide it into position, like so, until you're on top of that bracket. Right about there. Take a look underneath. You want to see how that has interacted now with that undertail. That's lined up just great, no problems. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take the 2 fasteners that I used on the top. Give you an idea of, this is some spares that I had previously. A little larger head here, you have more clamping surface when doing that. Just easier on the bodywork. It's also important to note that when we do apply final torque to these, you don't want to really crank them down. If you're hearing bodywork crack it, you are over tightening the fasteners, okay? I'm going to put those in right about finger tight, raise the table up so I can get that undertail on. Okay, I'm going to come up here and get these fasteners started. Once again, I'm not going to tighten these down all the way. Do that on both sides. Don't need to get super close over here because at the end of the day, that is literally just a mirror image from side to side. I left the seat on my bike. You could take it off of yours if you feel like it's in the way. I'd recommend probably doing that during your project. Okay, finger tight. Now we move on to the 6. These are just the OE fasteners that were used from Yamaha, right from the factory. You want to make sure that you have them all released, like so. Should look like that. I like to make sure that when I drill the holes for a fastener like this in the fiberglass, I want these to take a little effort to push through. The reason behind that is I've seen these come loose, and what you don't want to have happen is have them come loose and come out, okay? So if it takes effort to compress it and get it through the fiberglass, that means that if it does, the head pops loose, it's not just going to fall out and find its way onto the racetrack. Like so. Probably going to sort out some type of plate for back here just to seal that up. I don't think that's a requirement by any means, but it's something I'm kind of interested in doing. You know, the goal now with the R3 is to kind of take this project a little further now that Max is going to race the bike. Just little fine details that for just track day use, right, which is what he was doing in end of 17 and into 18. You know, I just didn't think it was really necessary to go any further than we already had. Need to push up there a little bit just to get the fiberglass to meet the plastic so I could get that tight all the way. From here, we can tighten up the fasteners now. And once again, notice, I'm not wrenching that down until you hear a bunch of fiberglass cracking. Just putting a little more torque on it. Same thing on both sides. Now we need to lower it down and we'll install the pan on top. Okay, obviously before I put that top pan on, I just want to go ahead and let's put some torque on these bad boys here. I found it definitely made installing the plastic pins underneath a lot easier if you had left all the metal fasteners loose. Let's grab the pan. I have the seat on the bike, like we already, kind of addressed that. Might be easier to just take that off. The fasteners are fairly loose in here right now, and that is because I don't have the plastic washers installed. You're gonna have a washer on the back side of this that'll hold it onto the panel, okay? That way if it comes loose, it doesn't fall out on the racetrack. And if there is room, you'll have a washer between the fastener and the fiberglass panel itself. Once those are added, that will take up any of the slack that's there and really tighten everything up nice. As you can see, the tail fit really well, intuitive design, I dig that. Now we're ready to move forward and do the upper fairing. Okay, here is our upper fairing, okay? Something I want to show you that's unique. This is a really big piece. Look how narrow it is down here, where it meets the lower. In order to get this on the R3, you need to spread it apart, slip it over the tire, under the fork bottoms, and lift it up. Hopefully when I do that on camera, I look like I have at least a reasonable level of coordination. A little bit challenging, practice makes it better for sure. You can see the Armour Bodies has a good amount of flex to it. The body lines are nice. Now I want to cover where I drill the holes and how well the dimples lined up. Where it meets the fairing stay, those are drilled dead center. The windscreen I already have installed. Each one of those I literally drilled off the bike without even lining the screen up, and I just popped them dead center. I would recommend taking a quick look with your windscreen to make sure the stuff is going to line up. But historically, as I've said previously, the Armour Body stuff, they do a nice job with the dimple location. Moving towards the back, the side panels that connect the tail and the upper, there's a tab in the front of it. This notch was already cut into that tab from that panel is going to dip in there. This is the area where you could either A, reuse that metal OEM J-nut, or do what I did, drill it out and use a windscreen well nut. Drill that literally dead center. Here's a main structural mounting point back here where it bolts to the frame. You can see that hole is drilled dead center. My preference is to use the rivet-on style fasteners. And I'd like to just give you a brief overview of how I decided where I was going to locate these. First thing you want to do is make sure you don't have any conflicts on the other side of the bodywork, specifically the radiator hose, the radiator where the back side of the deuce fastener would be in contact with something or could possibly rub through. You don't want that fastener to contact anything, so you want to have the upper fairing before you drill these up on the bike. You've already used these mounting holes, double check all that and make sure you don't have any conflicts. To determine where to drill the holes, you need two people. You can clearly see this line here, this is the area of overlap. So what I'll do is I'll have two people. This time it was myself and my son Max. I would hold the bodywork together and then Max from the inside of the fairings traced with a Sharpie the area of overlap. From there I was able to determine the best possible place to drill for the deuce fasteners. In doing so, what I like to do is I like to start from the overlapping piece. I drill through that, make sure that I'm going to have plenty of material for either a slip over deuce fastener backing plate or the rivet over. Once I drill the hole in the overlapping piece, I will then trace while holding this together perfectly, trace onto this and then drill that. If you follow that, do one side at a time and then install the fasteners on the side you've completed before you begin working on the other side, you're going to get yourself a good result. Okay, now to get this over, and man, I'm really hoping I can do this without looking like a monkey football, right? So you need to spread this apart, kind of get it under those fork tubes, like so. You want to be cognizant of the top part. And once you kind of get it coming back, you're in a pretty decent shape. But it's a little bit different. You know, take your time here. This isn't the type of thing you want to be forcing, right? You got to push hard. You need to back off. All right, let's get that back in position. Kind of line it up here with the fairing stay. On the clutch side of the motorcycle, the hole that's already drilled, there is a stud. You want to come over here, Caleb? What I like to do, anytime I'm putting this on, is let it sit on that stud. You can literally let it go now. It's going to support itself. This puts you in a position where you can go ahead and get the fasteners you're going to use up here on the fairing stay. I've got a modal holders fairing stay on this bike. It is made in the shape of the OEM, so you can reuse your steel one, no problem. The OEM fairing stay has these rubber ears that slide over and has these metal spacers that kind of push the fairing out a little bit. I don't think with the Armour Bodies I'm going to be using that. I believe the fit I got without using that was the best. As I fine tune this after we get it painted, you know, there's a possibility I might change my mind, so save your hardware for sure, but it looks like I will not need to reuse that. It'll be more advantageous to not use it. Do not tighten these down. I'm just going to get them started. Some of the bodywork installs too, instead of using fasteners here, oftentimes I will opt to use zip ties, cable ties. The reason behind that is they flex really easy, and in the event you have a crash, the cable ties yield first. So instead of having the bolts in here holding everything together, which is definitely an area where the bodywork can get damaged, if you just have the cable ties, they might just pop off and really minimize damage. Not 100% sure what I'm going to do there, but these fasteners fit very nicely into the dimples. From here, we can go ahead and raise the motorcycle up and begin working on the connection between the upper and lower, and then of course the side panels. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and let's get this bolted up. This passes through. There is a threaded tab there on the frame. I'm not going to tighten this up. This is just going to be just finger tight, loosely on the bike. On the other side, we have a nut and a flat washer. If Caleb wants to just follow me over. You know, when you're into your project, these things will make a whole lot more sense because you'll have already been here and seen this stuff. With the hot bodies we had on the bike previously, this is the fastener setup that I used. So same thing, I'm not going to tighten that up right now. Now we're ready to grab those side panels and hook those on both sides. From there we'll do the lower. Okay, here is that side panel. Here's the tab, it's going to dip in the hole here. Hole for the fastener, hole for the fastener and back, and we have a Christmas tree clip. It's going to dip right in this grommet here. For this installation, this one will not be connecting to anything. That's just going to float freely. I already have the seat on the bike. Okay, so just got to kind of dip that under a little bit. Get that clip to push in. Push in, get that to lock in place. Upper fairing is still loose. And that gives you the ability to just kind of manipulate things a little bit. It's important to note that, you know, once you get this all done, all painted up, and even if you don't paint it up, but you get it all done and it stays assembled for a while, and you get it out in the sun, you expose it to some heat, you know, that is the final adjustment, man. That's where everything just kind of comes together, and you'll find Bodywork after a period of time gets so much easier to remove and reinstall, and the fit, you know, improves to some degree as well. So that's something you do want to bear in mind. If the first couple of installs and removals after you do it, you're like, man, that seems like it's taking a little effort, it's a little tougher than I think it needs to be. Don't go pushing the panic button. Take the bike to the track, ride it a little bit, and let it sit in the sun. You can see that lined up pretty well. Through the other side, just a mirror image. On this side, I did have to open this hole up a little bit. I wasn't able to get this to slide as far forward as I wanted to, and I actually just used a razor knife and just kind of trimmed that very carefully by hand. So that was one spot where I did have to make a little bit of an adjustment to this kit. Get that dipped under the seat like so. So I need to just kind of get the fairing just a little, pull a little pressure here, get that tab located down in there. And this is one of the things that I think, like, this is going to get better over time. You know, it's right now a little tight, but I do think that this is something that's just going to yield. You know, once you get it out in the sun, you let it bake a little bit, it's going to get better. And I think that's a case there too for using the rubber well nut instead of that metal J nut, because that's much more rigid. You know, you're just not going to get as much flex and movement out of it, and in the end I think that's kind of a negative. Go ahead and put a little torque to that. That's done at this point. Same thing up front, so you can see in the end that really came together pretty nicely. Already got the lower fairing over here. Something I do want to tell you is that, like we had talked about earlier, you're going to want to spend time before doing any drilling with this on the bike, things basically mocked up and mounted up. to ensure that you are putting these fasteners in the best possible point. Okay, so you really do that from here. And once you've identified, hey, this is the right place, do I have any conflicts back here? Are there any things I need to trim in advance? One area where you typically may have to do it, it's going to be in the exhaust area. Every aftermarket system is different. For the M4 system, I had to cut out, a fair amount here, about this much, in order to get the clearance I needed. When you're trying to mock this up and you have a big contact back here, that puts the whole thing askew. So it's important to understand that as well when mocking up. For the two holes that were dimpled, you can see I drilled on the center there for the brake side. And then over here, I drilled on center as well. If you want to get a quick look here at that bracket, this is literally just a driven reservoir bracket, stainless steel. Look at that cool light he found on the camera. All these years we didn't know it was there. And I just bent it to position. I opened the hole on this end up more, and I used another windscreen well nut, and I slid that in there. Once you've done all this, right, you've got your fasteners all drilled up, give you an idea of what your fit looks like. Let's get the upper spread apart just a little bit. I don't have the plastic washers in the deuce fasteners yet, okay? Remember, those are going to help retain it, as well as shield the painted surface, once you've done that, from the metal, the contact with the metal. If you have enough room to install all those, you definitely want to do that. At a minimum, you need to make sure that you're using the retainer that holds the male portion of the deuce to the lower fairing, okay? Before you put your fastener over here, go to the other side, and let's go ahead and get those deuce fasteners twisted in place. And this is the kind of thing, don't get a little push and pull, don't freak out, right? These aren't OEM fairings. These are fiberglass race fairings that are meant to mimic the OE shape and design. No way are they ever meant to have the same level of quality and fit that you see with the OE stuff. Fastener back here. That into position. Follow me over to the other side. This is the fastener that we're going to use back here. I'll go ahead and torque that one all the way right about there. A little torque to this. This is a spot too where like a nice rubber washer in here on the other side of that flat metal washer, that'll help you get a little squeeze and get a little mechanical grip. Just help ensure that stuff stays tight. You could use that on some of those other larger panhead fasteners that I have holding Bodywork on too. It'll shield it, offer a little squish. And, in some ways almost work like thread locker. Get this back here. See how I'm kind of manipulating the fairing just a little bit. I'm holding that as I snug it up to try and maintain my gap here back at the exhaust. That may need just a little extra trim. Pretty close there, right? It's so close I could probably finish that with sandpaper if I do decide I want to go a little bit more. Come up here, finish that off. Like so. This kit, of course, includes the front fender. It's already installed. I am not going to go through the whole process of doing that. On the R3, in order to do that, the way I have it set up right now, you have to remove the front tire to do it, okay? I drilled both holes dead center. I reused all of the OEM hardware. That would be the rubber grommets along with the metal spacers in between. Fits great, no problems. The most interesting man in the world, the retired one from Dos Equis, could install that fender. It fits so good. As I said at the very beginning of this, I find the R3 to be one of the more complicated bikes out there. Comparing this to my GSXR 1000 or several of the other bikes I've done in the past, this one takes more effort, it takes more time to get it dialed in, and it all comes down to having one piece that connects the tail and that upper fairing. That really changes everything. So with this kit, you definitely want to take your time to make sure that you get the best end result. I like the quality. I think it's worth the spend. You can see that the difference between this and Hot Bodies, is it a gigantic spread? No. Is there some quality difference? I think it's fair to say that. I think the lines are a little sharper here. I think the finish on the outside is of little higher quality. So look at the two, and I want you to compare the savings and decide how much that's worth for you. We've got two good videos on both kits that we offer for this bike. I've used and endorse both. I dig it. That Hot Bodies kit was on this motorcycle for one crash, one full season, and the end of the season when Max rode it, and that thing performed flawlessly. My expectations, having used Armour Bodies before, it's on my Gixxer right now, and I've used it on other bikes, is we're gonna have a similar experience with that. The difference is the difference in final fit and overall external finish. Determine what's important to you.